during all of this talk about E15, higher blends, one of the things that marketers keep telling us is that they love E85, they love flex fuel because it makes them more money. We got some numbers just recently from Iowa on their 2017 totals for their programs in their state, and wanted to go over some of those because they mirror a lot of what the typical marketer is finding as they sell E15, E85, E30, utilizing blender pumps or not. But it was kind of interesting to see these numbers. For the first time in quite a few years, overall fuel sales went down, and that's fairly consistent with other parts of the country. But while they went down, ethanol blends went up 3.5%. It was down 1.7. Ethanol blends were up 3.5%. E15 took a huge increase, probably because of a couple of big marketers that started in 2017. 26 million gallons of new, or 26 million gallons total in the state of Iowa. That's 21 million more than the year before. Total of 3.9 million gallons of ethanol in that fuel, 1.3 million more than you'd have if it had been E10. Now E85, which Iowa has always done a very good job with E85, still they had an increase of 7.1 million gallons, which is a pretty huge increase compared to the 16 they did the year before. But to keep in mind, or I'm sorry, the 13 they did the year before, keep in mind that, you know, that's mostly ethanol. In their state, I think the average was about 79% most of the year. So that's 16.25 million gallons of ethanol, 14.2 million gallons when you compare it to what would have been in that fuel if somebody had bought E10 instead. So it's a significant amount of volume that goes out in either one of those, and any higher blend is one that we're going to be happy to see. But I want to make sure people understand that the E85 and the mid-level blends are things that are bringing a lot of volume of ethanol to the market. Some of the interesting things when you divide them up by station, when you their report shows the number of stations that sold each kind of fuel, and we took that and divided it by the number of gallons sold. Of the stations that sell E85, the average is about 6,000 gallons per month. E0, about 9,000 gallons per month. And I put that in there because I wanted to compare it versus E15. So all of these people who are selling E0, who think they have to have E0 because otherwise they'll lose business. If you look at the next number, it's E15 at 12,000 gallons per month. The people who sell that are selling quite a bit of it, in most cases more than the people who sell E0. And then E10, 55,000. And again, with the volume of those, the ethanol amount per store per month, E15, there's about 1,800 gallons of ethanol there, 4,500 gallons of ethanol in the 85, and of course in those averages, 5,500 gallons of E10. Also, while we're talking about RINs, some of you have seen, I had seen a report by Opus asking me about RINs and, you know, what that means, what lower RIN prices mean, and you know, without telling somebody RIN prices aren't always critical, I wanted to make sure they understood that RINs were a part of the math, but not all of the math. And I got this chart to show you just an example of what I mean when I say that. If you look at the prices, and I don't know if you can see my little mouse arrow, the prices are in this category here, and you can see what the prices have done since late October last year, when RINs were 98.5 cents. And then this is the Chicago spot market price, by the way. And when I did the illustration here, it was April 19th, so a couple weeks ago, 36-cent RINs back then. So, you know, you would think, gosh, that's 60 cents, then it must be impossible to sell E15. That was what the reporter approached me with, saying, with these RIN prices dropping, then the math doesn't work anymore. Well, the fact is, at the same time, gas prices have gone up and ethanol prices haven't gone up as much. They've gone up a little, but they haven't gone up nearly as much. And so if you look at the total cost line in each of these illustrations, I mean, it's a lot nicer to have an E70 for $1 less than unleaded, but it's still 70 cents less than unleaded right now. And I think people who are going to buy it for $1 less are going to continue to buy it for 70 cents less. Also, if you compare the unleaded this is clear unleaded gasoline. Compared to E10, you'll notice it's almost 20 cents. And in October last year, it was about a 7-cent differential to E15. Well, it's still about 4 cents, a little more than 4 cents differential today. And I guess I'd repeat, what we're seeing is that people who will buy E15 because it's 7 cents cheaper or 5 cents cheaper or 10 cents cheaper continue to buy it when it's only 3 or 4 cents less expensive. So we are still seeing sales of E15 in those markets being pretty brisk. A lot of that has to do with how they market it, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in the presentation. I also wanted to just compare what's going on at the racks with prices today. I took these off of Opus, a Midwest rack price, just so you can see what the differentials are right now for gasoline, sub-octane, and ethanol. It's actually kind of interesting to me that there's still these spreads that you see here, but what hasn't happened in quite a while is we haven't had a time when people could blend a straight gasoline product, in this case a sub-octane, with ethanol or with E85 and be competitive at all. There's usually been a large gap between the pre-blended E10, which is, you got the RE10, which stands for rack E10. That typically has been as much as probably 4 to 5 to as much as 7 cents cheaper than you could make E10 yourself. So there are some opportunities now that are popping back up with that lower RIN price, that maybe it's, maybe there's an opportunity for some of these people who've blended in the past to go back to blending either with a sub-octane in one tank and an E85 or ethanol in the other. It's just a reminder that there are so many people who got into this flex fuel or E85 or blender or even blending their own E10 or E15 business because the price of ethanol was so much more attractive than the price of gasoline. And we got to keep that in mind as we move forward, that the RINs are important, but they're not the only thing that we have going for us. Now, over the last 2 years, a big effort has been put in to make sure that some of these bold-faced names that are on this slide have switched to E15. We've been telling everybody about it, and it's starting to get the attention of folks out there. Our market development program has always been an approach to other marketers, to station owners, to whether they own a single station or a chain, to talk to them about what their cohorts are doing in other parts of the country. We do that through all these tools you have here, and we know that as I talked about before, when people talk about who they trust most, there's usually academic experts, technical experts, and then there's a person like myself, a person like me. People trust someone that's like them. And that's what our approach has always been and continues to be. Our FlexFuelForward.com website is set up as a website that features marketers talking about what they've done with E15, what they've done with flex fuels. And it doesn't really have an ethanol feel to it. In fact, I think you have to scroll down to the bottom of the page to find our name on it anywhere. It's meant to be marketers helping marketers so that they can see what those other guys know that maybe they can find out now. And as more people have become familiar with the fact that those bold-faced names are selling E15, particularly, we get a lot more questions about it. FlexFuelForward.com has become busier. We've added some stuff to it. We've updated it, and we continue to move forward with that. We have a plan over this next year to increase the video content of it. We're moving along right now with 5 out of the first 8 of our ads. Actually, I'm gonna go back there. 5 out of the first 8 of our advertisements are up there, or of our videos are up there, and we're considering doing another video recording this summer with a few of the people that we've got on the other ones and a few new ones. Just addressing some of the common themes that we hear on the road. We're doing some targeted advertising, online and social media, and updating, keeping our roadmap updated online. Chuck does a great job of that, and then doing our marketer outreach. And a few examples of each one. I didn't put the video in that many of you have seen. Our latest video has done very well. We'll talk about that here in a minute. In order to get people to this Flex Fuel Forward site and to see our videos, we've done some targeted advertising. On the left here, you can see the full page ad that we've run in NACS magazine, and the other side, you can see a couple of the examples of the advertising we've done online and in search engine marketing and some other different things we're doing this year. The message you see in one case on one side, the sort of that rebel feel that seems like something that we found fairly consistent with the people who went and did E85 or E15. But on the other side, the strike gold without digging frame that you'll see, that's also what our trade show graphic says. It's a good example of how we've taken the two things that we've gotten the most questions about. That is, how much does it cost? I understand I have to dig this whole place up. I have to do all these different things. And then the other thing that people get excited about is that they can make money. And so that message with 4 words kind of answers a couple of their questions right off the bat. And you see the bottom on the right side also has that some people don't want you to leave their comfort zone approach, kind of the people who want to be out there and be a little bit of a rebel and maybe do something that their competitors haven't thought of yet. Okay, our online search engine marketing, that's what SEM stands for, in social media. This is something we did a lot more of this year, and we're pretty happy with how it's turned out. 5 of the 8 videos that we've filmed have been produced and posted on the Flex Fuel Forward YouTube channel. We're at, with the latest one, it has 1,927 unique viewers. And as you know, with YouTube, if you go in there multiple times, it still counts you as one. So we don't know how many times it's actually been watched, but we know there's been closing in on 2,000 unique viewers. So I didn't include it here because I couldn't figure out how to do it. And besides that, most of you have already seen it. But if you haven't, go there, because we'd like to get that number over 2,000. Just by comparison, the original video that we did when we set up Flex Fuel Forward is just over 1,000 views. The animation that we've had on there that talks about why marketers would do E15, that's a little over 1,500. And Bob O'Connor, which is the second video that we did this year, but we introduced it at NACS, that one's about 650. So we're pretty happy with this latest video and how that one's shown up and how many people have seen it. It's going on, our ad is going on one of the sites today or tomorrow, and then one of the C-Store magazine sites, along with a video link that's on their page. So we think we'll get some more views of that. But the important reason for that, and like you see the next item, Flex Fuel Forward, we've doubled the number of followers we've had this year. But the reason for all of those is to get people to come to the website and click on it and learn about their potential in adding a new fuel like E15 or E85 or some blend in between. And remember, these are targeted towards petroleum marketers, the station owners. So our universe of people that we're advertising to is about 125,000 people. And as you can see, we generated 181,500 impressions. On Facebook, 81,000 video views. Now that sounds like a big number, but I'm told that that's anybody who rolls over it and it starts up is considered a video view. So unlike YouTube, where that's somebody who actually sat and watched it, these include some people who maybe went by it. But there were about somewhere around 18,000 people who clicked or watched the video that we know were unique visitors. So what I got from the social media people that do this for us was that their impression was that people looked at it 5 times. Don't know if that's accurate or not, but 81,000 sounds like a lot. It sounds like a lot more than I would expect. But of all those things, for people who ended up clicking through to the website, and this is the first full month, which was February, there were 908 total people who clicked through that to our website, to the flexfuelforward.com website. The search engine marketing was the most efficient, 10,308 impressions, 454 clicks. A normal click-through rate is between 1% and 2%. That's 4.5%, 4.4%. So we're pretty happy with. We apparently gave them the right names to go after because we got quite a bit of attention there. We've updated our roadmap. This is just one example of one of the things we're doing. Chuck went through and did all of the state-by-state updates in the laws, different funds that they have available. And then we update this chart on E15 warranties. We've only got just the two companies, Subaru and Mazda, that are holding out, and the ones that you see with stripes have some models that are still not warranted for E15 use, but it's safe to say that about 90% of all 2018 model year cars are manufactured for and compatible with and guaranteed for, warranted for, whatever the heck else you want to say for E15, not as though there's going to be any problems with any of the others, the Mazdas and Subarus that aren't, but those are in the owner's manual. And it's safe to say now, if you look at this map, most warranties in the United States are 3 years. There's a couple of companies who have 4 and a couple who have 5. But for the most part, you're probably looking at 2/3 to 75% of the cars that are on the road right now that actually have warranties, that include the use of E15. Now that talked about marketer outreach, these are some photos from our NACS visit, taking it on the road. We've been to quite a few trade shows already this year. There's the list. We got a few left, the biggest one being NACS at the end of that. The totals on these shows, the shows that aren't NACS total about 13,500 different marketers that attend those from 37 states. NACS is just under 25,000 from every state in the United States, plus a few countries, a few foreign countries. And it's always interesting because a couple of years ago in Las Vegas, we had a lot of visitors from Mexico when Mexico was first considering allowing ethanol when they were denationalizing the fuel from Pemex. And I think last year, I was talking with Chuck, I think it was Uruguay was one of the countries where we got visits from. So it's always we're always kind of curious to see who's going to come to see us from different countries, so we know what might be coming down the pike here with other countries that are starting to use more ethanol. Importantly, probably more important than anything else, is that when we go out there, we're listening to marketers. What are they telling us? We've formed a group that we've referred to as our MAP. It kind of goes with our roadmap discussion, but it's our marketer advisory panel. 7 or 8 different marketers from different parts of the country telling us what they've been successful with, what they haven't been successful with, what they wish we would do, which we would do, which they would like us to do less of. And so we use that to guide us as we're looking at whether it's advertising, different things we're putting on the Flex Fuel Forward website, different approaches we're taking as we go out to these trade shows. And what we're seeing more than anything else this year, the difference between this year and even last year, when we had some people coming around wanting to know what was going on with all these other companies selling E15, it's that the approach this year is more a question of people asking how they can do E15 rather than why should they. I think they've seen the math, they've seen some of the different people that are out there selling E15, figured out that it's not as scary as everybody else has told them it is, and wondering what they have to do. We've had branded marketers ask us, will my brand allow me to do it? The answer is usually no, but this year, even just at the last show we were at, we had a couple of Shell marketers who stopped by and said they'd like to sell E15 and wondered what they could do. They had a brand meeting the next day, and my recommendation to them was was from something we did back when Amoco was making it difficult for us to sell E10 in North Dakota probably 15 or 20 years ago. And I said, you got to tell them that they're going to have to let you sell E15 or they're going to keep losing volume to the Quick Trips of the world that are taking your business in Wisconsin. That's where this particular group was from. And that's the only way to get some of these branded suppliers, these branded companies to move, because otherwise they have sections in their contracts that say you can't sell a product that's not ours, and conveniently none of them want to sell E15 at this point. I've also noticed the association's attitudes are changing. And some of you are very familiar with the Petroleum Marketers Association of America. They come out with usually some kind of dire prediction or something derogatory towards E15 in particular, just about every month or so. And we're hearing from the state associations, which are the associations that make up PMAA, that they don't agree with PMAA and that they're looking at doing some kind of workshops or some kind of education so their members can find out how they can affordably and safely sell E15. So that's good movement. I don't know how many of you, those of us who've been to Missouri many times, Missouri has an executive who's been very tough on E15, who, when we saw him at Pace, asked if there was something that we can work on so that his members can learn all they need to know about E15 and possibly get into the business. So if he's changing, I think everybody else is probably ready to go too. And then the final point on this one is that the marketers are, we've had these people telling us, we need your help in marketing this, and kind of generic discussions about, our help as an industry. We finally had enough time and seen enough people from across the country and just point blank ask them, what is it exactly that you mean by that? And what we find more than anything else is that this going back and forth between flex fuel and non-flex fuel is it just drives them crazy, whether they're huge supporters or not. We think we're going to be able to parlay that maybe into some greater participation when it comes to contacting EPA and telling them you need to straighten out this RVP situation. We're going to have a call with some folks next week to talk about doing just that. But we also are working on some approach to make sure that they know what to tell their customers, because we now have a fairly large number of people who've bought E15, who purchase it all the time, who like it, who know that it costs less, who are going to have it taken away from them in a month. And we need to make sure that in the next few weeks, as that comes closer, that we tell people that that's going to happen, and that we tell them when it does happen, why it happened, and who they need to talk to about it. So we may have an opportunity here to have some assistance from the people that, there are a lot more of them than there are of us, people out there who drive up to that pump every day and buy fuel. And that has always been my hope with E15, is that when we get to the summer, there would be so many of them that get so mad about it that whether it's EPA or Congress or anybody else, that they can't help but do something to make sure that we can continue to sell E15. So we're trying to do whatever we can in the short period of time we've got left to make sure that that message gets out, and we'll update you as we come up with more. What it doesn't mean, we had an interesting panel at the Nebraska Ethanol Board meeting here a few weeks ago, and Charlie Bosselman, who was one of the people that was on our panel at the ACE conference last year, was talking about his customers and our customers, and he mentioned that there's a lot of effort that we put into advertising to people, and he specifically pointed out consumer advertising. And one of the people in the crowd asked him, well, what should we tell people about E15? And his answer to them was, you shouldn't. You should let me do that, because they're my customer. They're standing at my pumps. They're buying from my station. And it was a good reminder of the fact that these people all have pretty big advertising budgets, and if we can coordinate on the message we want their customers to hear, they'll probably do it for us. they like to control what their customers are hearing. They like to be the people that are giving them something if there's a benefit. So it's just a reminder that when we're talking about, it's always fun to do, talk about brand names and marketing strategies and that sort of thing. But the hard work that needs to be done is to get this regulatory stuff cleared out for them. And I could see a time when there was some sort of co-op advertising fund or something that we could do as an industry to help make sure they're saying the things we want to. But it's just a reminder that the marketers who are out there advertising every day would gladly include our product in their advertising if we make it attractive to them. Outside of the U.S., we talked about this quite a bit on Twitter here the last few weeks, but we've been involved quite a bit more with the U.S. Grains Council this last 6 to 8 months, and we'll continue to do that. One of the big markets that I've spent some time in is Mexico. It's a 12.5 billion gallon gas market, so 1.2 billion gallons a year in E10. Logistics are going to be complicated there. MTBE has got a big base and has been there for a long time, and they're not going to just concede the marketplace. But it is fun to see some marketers that you can when we talk to them about how ethanol first came into the U.S. market through splash blending, through individual marketers like some of the folks I worked for, putting a tank up in a loading rack a few blocks away from a pipeline terminal and showing them the math and how that works today in Mexico. Even if you buy your gas from from Pemex, the former national oil company, if you splash some ethanol in there, you can still make an extra, I think the other day I looked, it was about $0.015 a liter. And that's pretty exciting to these guys because they've never had any control over their volume or over their cost or over when they got a load of gas. So within the last couple of years, they have gained that control, and some are more interested, some are not interested at all. But there are, I think, enough people out there who can see that this is something that could work for them. And so it's always fun to go to these workshops and see some of these people and watch them as they're selling this fuel and any other fuel for the first time ever, where they've got some control over it. It's a lot of fun, and we're happy to be involved in that. Some of the other markets internationally, Canada, about the same size, about the same amount of gasoline sold there. Last year, I think they sold around 750 million gallons. They could use up to 1.2 billion gallons. Japan, many of you might have noticed the announcement. They use ETBE, and they're going to allow 44% of the 217 million gallons per year of ETBE that they make to be made from corn ethanol. So that's just under 100 million gallons of ethanol demand there. Brazil goes back and forth. China is one that has fascinated me since I started looking at their numbers. They have over 300 million vehicles in China. About 225 million of those are passenger cars. That's almost U.S. totals. Our passenger car market is growing by about 17 million 17 million vehicles per year. Theirs is in the range of 28 to 30 million per year. So it won't be too long before they have more vehicles than we have. And I think right now we've got about a 2.5 year head start on them, and then they're going to have more vehicles than us. Although they are the leader in electric vehicles, they also, the number of that last year was 600,000 vehicles. So of their 27.5 million, just about 27 million of them were gas or diesel powered. So there's still going to be quite a market there. Obviously, there's a lot of other things that come into play when you're talking about China, but that is a huge potential international demand market. All of these markets are, the U.S. Grains Council is heavily involved in those, and we have committed to helping them in any way we can, whenever we can. So I believe that's my last one. There's those websites that you could go to, and I'm going to see if I can figure out how to look up questions. But again, if you've got questions, there's a, towards the bottom of that stack of things on the right side, there's a thing that says questions. We've got one here that came up to Subaru or Mazda sell cars in Brazil where E27.5 is the fuel, and I'm sure if they sell cars there, I'm sure they do. One of the really interesting things we saw I think it was last week or the week before, was that one of the companies had I think it was Toyota, had a flex fuel hybrid. That was one of the things we've talked about kind of, I don't know, casually around here, that would be really cool if they had a few more of those. So that's one that they're talking about in Brazil. And as you know, if there's a car there, they have two kinds of fuel, the 20 something and 100%. So I would assume that if they've got those cars, they do sell those. I guess the good news is that totals wise, their numbers in the US make it so that our percentage of cars that can legally sell E15 or illegally or whatever under warranty use E15. It's still pretty high, but I would suspect they do have those. Trying to see if there's any other questions that anybody has, or Brian and Jonathan, if you're still on, if you want to open up your mics, and if there's anything that you want to mention or add, feel free. Got another question. Do you think we'll see the level of growth in E15, the same level of growth in E15 this year that we saw in 2017? I think we will. I think we might see it. I think we might see it even bigger. It does seem like there's a little more comfort when you talk to the rank and file of fuel marketers. I think they've talked to some of their friends, and if they haven't, then we usually have one of their friends with us at our trade shows. And a lot of the growth the last 2 years obviously has come because of the USDA's Biofuels Infrastructure Partnership, or BIP program. That was a big boost. Keep in mind, though, that a lot of that is still being carried over into this year, and some of those probably just got going towards the end of last year. So the volume that we showed last year is probably, right off the bat, even those same stations will probably do more volume this year than they did last year. So I do think we'll continue to see growth. It's also important to remember E15, the word is finally, I think, making it to individual marketers that it really doesn't cost anything, there's no significant cost in adding E15. I think there's a lot of them that are just getting really tired of having to hang on to something like a mid-grade where they haven't sold any forever, after they see numbers like some of their buddies are showing with E15 and with E85. Let's see. What is the effect of much higher gasoline prices is the other one. Obviously, if the gas prices are higher and our price is lower, as those first couple of slides indicated, it does make it a little easier to do the math for a marketer and show them why it's advantageous for them to sell a flex fuel or a higher blend. I guess I read the question. I don't know if I told you guys what it said. What's the effect of much higher gasoline prices? So if gas prices get higher, there's two things also. Hopefully that means, some of the plants that are selling their ethanol for a price that isn't quite as high as it should be will be able to get a little bit more for that product. But the gap between gasoline and ethanol has always been one of the things that attracted marketers to do this. As I've said so many times, I would love for it to know that everybody sells our fuel because it's cleaner and it's greener, and they love it because it's made by their neighbors. But when it comes right down to it, they have to make money. And our job is to get out there and show them how they can make money, and then let them know at the same time that they should be pretty proud of the fact that they're making money by making the world a little cleaner and by making it a little easier on people's vehicles. So we got time. I'll do one more, and then we're up against the hour, and we'll call it a call it a day. And it's the last one. It's the same kind of a key off of that one. What? Well, here I'll get one. What are car manufacturers making fewer flex fuel cars? What can be done there? No need for E85 stations without the cars. Well, that's actually a perfect question. The reason that, as I mentioned early, why I talk about E85. We have marketers who've invested money in dispensers. To go from 0 to E15 or even E25 doesn't cost anything, but to go to E85 is $7,500 to $9,000 per dispenser, and those people keep telling us that we need to make sure we keep the pressure on EPA to make sure that if an automaker makes a flex fuel vehicle, that it's worth their while. They are not making as many flex fuel vehicles as they were in the past, and that's because they don't get CAFE credits, efficiencies, I believe, or flexibilities. I'm not sure, Brian, you might the actual term for it, but they don't get extra credit for making flex fuel vehicles like they used to. And it is one of those things that we need to make sure people continue to talk to EPA about. It's certainly when we're in a marketplace against vehicles that are, electric vehicle, I think is considered, or a hybrid is considered to be running on electricity half of the time. And so whatever its number is, it's that much higher. As these flex fuel volumes go up, and we see that people are buying used flex fuel vehicles, or even the work that some of you have gone through to get new flex fuel vehicles, by making sure that like if that they've got a fleet model that's got a flex fuel, that EPA, as they're writing some of these rules, if there's an opportunity to talk about giving credit for vehicles that'll handle flex fuels, that EPA works that into their rules. So a great question and a good one to end on. So with that, thank you again for taking part in our webinar. It will be, I'll let Shannon figure out, I don't know how this gets recorded and put back up on our website, but appreciate all of you taking the time to take part. If you have any further questions, feel free to email them to me at rlamberty@ethanol.org. And thank you for your support of ACE, and have a good day.